Hello, beloved community. This is Reverend Jerry Hobby, and I am just so happy to be with you in this particular way. Obviously, I'm not here with you live, and the reason I'm not with you is because I'm in the midst of traveling back into our home base. I've been out in the world celebrating with one of our ministers the great work that she is being prepared to do and the wonderful things that are unfolding in this movement. But I did want to make sure I was able to spend some time with you today and just share something with you during this time of our Sunday Power Talk and Prayer. And so today we are focused on saying yes to our good. And as we move into that space of saying yes to our good, we get to learn more about ourselves and our growth. We are in the midst of growing beyond appearances. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that my week has been quite a week. There have been so many wonderful things that have unfolded. There have been things that I've been praying on, I've been working on, and I've been praying and working and praying and working. I know you know what I'm talking about. But as we move through that whole process, all of a sudden, the next thing we know, we blink, and that problem, what it appeared to be a problem, we're moving beyond that. There's resolution. We're having our demonstration. We're manifesting our good. And so today is a day where we get to remember the importance of that, and we get to know too what it is truly all about. And then we have had those moments. I know for me, I've had some moments that were a little sad. It was a little disheartening. And part of that has a lot to do with me and my attachments. It has a lot to do with me and those sacred memories that I've had. I had a special person in my life make her transition this week, and it was a little sad and bittersweet. It's a colleague of mine. We started off in ministerial school and were this person was a special friend. We collaborated on special projects. And yet at the same time, when we really get true to these teachings and we're honoring these teachings, we get to remember that life is not always what it appears to be. And when we're working on our good may not necessarily show up the way we think it's supposed to show up. And so, what I'm knowing about this wonderful person is that they have received their sacred healing, that they have been relieved of any sense of suffering and disease. Now, when I was many years a brand new minister, working in this thing we used to call the Youth and Family Village, one of the things that we did commit to in our sacred service with our youth was to make sure that we could do whatever we could to create a space of peace and harmony. And the goal was never to put them in a position where they suffered. And so, what I'm knowing about this individual is that this individual has received a healing. There is a liberation that is taking place, and there is something greater at play within this individual's life. And this is what I know that is taking place within all of us. That's the reason I love the song that Larry sang, Everything Must Change. Being able to embrace the change and say yes to our good is an important part of the process. And part of that is remembering that we are spiritual beings here having a human experience, and that we can grow in an exponential way. We can grow and we can do great things in this human experience, and we can exalt each other in life. And the reason I'm sharing this with you right now is because right now, if we just are present with all the things that are happening in the world, it may seem like people have lost their minds. There are people that are over in this camp and that camp. They're pointing fingers at each other. They're mad at each other. They're blaming conditions on this group and that group. And many of these people had nothing to do with it, whatever is going on in the world. And many of these people are having the same desire, and that desire is for peace. By the way, we're a few days away from a season from nonviolence. And as we prepare to step into that arena of a season for nonviolence, we get to remember what we're celebrating. Just as I'm away and I've been at this celebration, a season for nonviolence, it's another opportunity to celebrate life. But what are we really celebrating about life? Now, back about 1998, Arun Gandhi, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, a great humanitarian, just as Martin Luther King, we've talked about him being a great humanitarian, and Ernest Holmes, a great humanitarian, set a tone, and it was a tone that has impacted the world. I want you to know that if you're still breathing, you get to set a tone and you get to impact the world. Many years ago, Ernest Holmes did a sermon. It was called The Sermon by the Sea at Asilomar. And this is what he says: find me one person who is for something and against no thing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, and an exalted human being. He also says, find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight. Find me someone who has redeemed his own soul, and he shall become my redeemer. Find me someone who has given all he has in love without morbidity, and I will have found the lover of my soul. I believe that the reason we're all here is to find the lover of our soul. And part of that process is the co-creation. And that co-creation is not just exclusively for ourselves, but it is all inclusive. And it is all about creating a world that works for everyone. And so part of our life experience is as we continue to learn, as we continue to grow, as we continue to expand, we get to move into a place of the grand rising. And I'm talking about that grand rising of consciousness, the theme that we're focusing on this year. So, what does that mean? Part of it is learning to be for something and against no thing. When we learn how to practice and be in that space where we advocate what we truly believe, and when we advocate the power of love for everything and everyone, we become a conscious co-creator, and we create a grand rising of consciousness. Now, over the course of life, we've had great humanitarians that have practiced this. And as we prepare to move into a season for nonviolence, we think about a lot of these wonderful people and the great things that they have been able to accomplish. I think about Martin Luther King because when we celebrate a season for nonviolence, we're celebrating these wonderful illuminaries. They are called illuminaries. And these illuminaries bring something special and powerful to the table. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of them. And We also get an opportunity to learn about this story of a season for nonviolence and the birth of it. This young man, Arun Gandhi, decided that he wanted to do something special for his grandmother and his grandfather. And that specialness had to do with what he stood for and the legacy that he passed on to his offsprings as well as the world, because he was the godfather of us all in that area when we start to think about the power of nonviolence. And what he did also was took a time that would have been very painful and tragic and took it and partnered with others that had experienced something similar. And they created a space for healing. So, over this 64-day period from January 30th to April 4th, we get an opportunity to keep our mind stayed on the consciousness and the light of truth. This is what Mahatma Gandhi had to share with us as he talked more and more about the practice of nonviolence. Now, the word he used was satyagraha. Satyagraha is truthfulness, fulfilling itself in and through all of humanity. And that truthfulness is anchored in the space of love, which is the foundation. So we have these two luminaries, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, coming together in this space. And what we get to celebrate is the luminaries that have supported this growth and were influenced by this awareness of truth and greatness, love being practiced in the entire world. So Ernest Holmes says that we can change and transform the world. And as we learn to change and transform the world, we get an opportunity to experience great things. He says, and this is what Ernest Holmes says, anything that the mind can think, it can unthink. So if we are thinking hatred, we can unthink it. And if therefore by the law of cause and effect, we have produced unpleasant conditions, we should be able by the same law to produce an entirely different effect. Now, I'm so grateful for people like Martin Luther King because he reminds us that nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the ones who wield it. It is a sword that heals. And so today is about our learning to create a footprint where we can wield the sword so that we can support justice all around us, goodness all around us. We learn how to become an advocate of creating a space of a world that works for all of us. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a student of these wonderful luminaries and became a wonderful teacher himself, reminds us that the essence of nonviolence is love. And out of love and the willingness to act selflessly, strategies, tactics, and techniques for nonviolent struggles arise naturally. Nonviolence is not a dogma. It is a process. But that process that we're talking about comes as a result of flexing a muscle. And that is that muscle memory of nonviolence and what it means. That's the muscle memory of love in action. And when we learn how to practice and flex that muscle, we begin to become a part of a grouping of people that are creating a world that works for everyone. And the reason we're having this conversation right now is I truly believe that we should not just talk ideology. We should not have this intellectual experience. I believe in all of this. I want you to hear me. But the thing that I want us to know is the practical side of the experience. And that practical side of the experience will teach us and it will support us in rising above our daily limitation. We rise above through our practice, and that practice is something that empowers us. Um, I came across a wonderful quote that was sent out by one of our ministers last year, and the quote is, "A world that works is not achieved by twiddling our metaphysical thumbs and singing kumbaya, but it is by getting to the nitty gritty of what ails those in our centers, the neighborhoods, and where we reside and beyond. It is also getting to the nitty gritty of what plagues and ails us ourselves. But this requires a practice." Mahatma Gandhi reminds us that we can move the world and we can do a lot of great things. He says a small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of history. And the reason I'm talking about the altering of the course of history is because you are a part of that. You are a beneficial presence in the world. So we do not have to yield to limitation. We do not have to live in a space where we're struggling, where we have anxieties. We get to rise, and we get to rise in the space of love and grow in the space of love. So, as we are moving forward this week, I want you to be mindful of this as we prepare to move into our season for nonviolence. Because truly, I believe that this season is a season about our grand rising, our growth. And that growth for me represents a united state. I want you to hear this, a united state of consciousness. Now, I want you to know I did not birth that. I got it from someone else, and I thank them for it. I believe I got it from our wonderful practitioner emeritus, Ray Jordan. But moving into that united state of consciousness will require that we rise in our consciousness. That rising comes from spiritual practice. That rising creates a space where we get an opportunity to experience the wonder of life. Now, I want to let you know that part of my sadness, we talk about change unfolding in the world. It is also a time where I get a chance to really remember and learn not to take life for granted. And part of my sadness of the passing of this special person is to remember all the special things that we've learned together, we've grown through, and how we have lived life. And when we start to focus on those things, we're able to move forward. The reason I'm saying this is we have a lot of people that may be a little sad, and they may have sadness because of the loss of a loved one. They may have sadness because things are not the way it used to be. And it may seem like everything is so chaotic and crazy, and we feel like imploding. What I want to remind you is when we continue to persevere in life, when we continue to go back again and again to truth, that truth will deliver us. It will set us free. I love Edwin Gaines, and I'm one of her students, and this is what she has to say. She says, "Wonderful, magical things can happen if you are willing to commit to putting yourself out there, stepping outside of your comfort zone, playing at the game of risk. It feels like risk, it feels like playing without a net. But when we make a commitment, we're never playing without a net because God is our net. When we remember that with God, and I have to tell you, I've had moments like, I don't know what's going to happen next. But I kept remembering these words: with God, all things are possible. And the more that I continue to remember that, there was a new step that was revealed to me, and it moved me higher, and it moved me higher, and it moved me higher. And what I want to say is, if it works for me, you know my story. If it works for Patty, it works. It can work for everybody. And I want you to remember too, if it worked for me, it can work for everyone. But the most important part is creating a sacred space. That's the reason Spiritual Enlightenment and Truth has created a space for us all to raise our consciousness, to grow. And we get to expand, and we get to prove life in a wonderful way. I want to share a story with you, and this is one of my favorite stories. And the reason it's one of my favorite stories is because it's what I like to use when I'm working through some things and I feel stumped about the things that are happening in my life. And it is the story of Henry Ford. I can also tell you a similar story about Ray Kroc and his growth with McDonald's. But Henry Ford decided he wanted to produce this thing. It's the famous V8 motor. And if anybody knows anything about cars, we've heard a lot about V8 motors or V8 engines. And he chose to build this engine from chose to build the engine, and the engine with an entire 8-cylinder cast with one block. And he instructed his engineers. Now, I don't know much about stuff like this. I'm just telling you the story. And he instructed his engineers to produce and design this engine. And the design was placed on paper, but the engineers, the interesting thing, agreed that it was simply impossible to cast an 8-cylinder engine block in one piece. And Ford replied, produce it anyway. When we can see it in our mind and we see the possibility, it is important that we not abandon that possibility. I'm going to share with you that this story is not just a story that happened once. A similar story happened again. Do you remember I said if Patty can do it, if it works for Patty, it can work for us. If it works for me, it can work for you. Ray Kroc had a similar situation in producing that perfect burger. And because of this experience, he was able to produce something that was extraordinary. That extraordinary was him producing these wonderful burgers. We call them Big Macs, the Quarter Pounder, and all of those different things there. And we think about the Chicken McNuggets. All were produced, and he invested time. He kept his team working, and he was having a Job experience. You know, Job says, I will not let you go until you have blessed me. We continue to grow in our understanding of universal law. And when we grow in our understanding of universal law, we will experience more glory and more glory. I'm going to leave you with some important things because this is important as we move forward. I don't know what's happening all around you, but I know that life is in session. And we all have life in session moments. That life in session may show up within your life in terms of your relationships. It could be chaos in your finances. It could be craziness unfolding at work or the places that you serve. It seems like everything is out of order. or it could be a scary world looming at us. I remember when Moses sent Joshua and Caleb and a team of people into the promised land to see what it was all about, and they came back and said it was crazy. What I want to remind you of is that all you need to do is clear your eyes and look directly into the situation and see something greater. And when you learn how to see something greater, you will see God in action, God fulfilling itself. Now, you may not like that word God. I want to qualify that. So you take the word God and change it because it's the same thing. And you can call it love in action. You can say the light in action. Mahatma Gandhi says non-violence is the first article of my faith. It is also the last article of my creed. So when we treat everything with love, we're going to find more greatness in our lives. We're going to allow that love to go in, and it is going to cast out the things that do not work. I love this quote. It comes from Robert Lawrence Smith, and it is from the book, A Quaker Book of Wisdom. He says, a leap of faith is required if we are to believe that nonviolence can heal a violent world. When a world is not working for anyone, then it seems as if we're experiencing violence. That turning of the other cheek, then when struck, instead of striking back, can end a fight. We need faith to believe that by loving our enemy, we can eventually transform our enemy into an ally. That even when nonviolence fails to achieve, it can succeed in curing hate. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that. Turning the other cheek does not mean that we get to be a doormat, but we get a chance to really speak our truth and come back to principle. We're in an age where we get to make those small pivots. We get to hear what people have to share. But when we send love into the space and we allow love to be that sword that Gandhi talked about, that can go in and ennoble itself, then we are creating change in the world. I want you to look for that opportunity to allow that sword to go in and use it this week. I want to encourage you to use it in your life within your personal affairs. And I'm going to invite you to carry that consciousness, that state of rising as good, that state of rising as truth, that state of rising as wisdom. Now, I can't tell you and give you verbatim way to do it. But I know that when you continue to practice and embody the spiritual practices, these techniques, it will support you. It will use you in ways that you know not of, and you will experience a mighty blessing. Marianne Williamson wrote in her book, Return to Love, humanity is a group of infinitely powerful creatures. I want you to remember that you are a powerful creature. And because you are a powerful creature, I know that you are definitely a blessing and you are here on purpose, right here and right now. So, this week, as you move forward, I want you to remember that. I am in that space where I'm missing my beloved friend, but I am going to remind you too that as I'm in that state of adjusting, because it's all simply an adjustment, I remember so many wonderful things and the wisdom and the light that this person brought to me as an illuminary, just as Martin Luther King was an illuminary. Mahatma Gandhi was an illuminary, and so are you. And one of the things that she shared with me, I remember many years ago, her sharing about her experience and dealing with loss and how she just was moved through this dark night of the soul when she experienced the love of her life. And she was stuck with children that she had to raise. And then she rose up. And when she rose up, she was able to change her life where it seemed like she wasn't going anywhere. She found a place in the world where it could work for her. And she raised her children and she excelled exponentially in very, very powerful ways. And she continued to give and give and give. And that light continued to grow and manifest as her and through her and in her life. This is what I know to be true about each and every one of us. There is something special within each of you, and you're saying yes to your goodness. You're saying yes to that wonderful possibility that lies within you is an important factor. So I want you to pay attention to that. And the most important part, you may say, Reverend Jerry, that sounds all good, but I don't even know where to start, or I don't even know how that applies to me. What I want you to remember is continue to show up here in this community. Continue to just play with us because it's all about play. The part that I'm missing that really stands out for me is the gift of joy and the gift of play that we had together, how we worked together and we played together. Play is an important part of life. Even when we are working, our play is important. That play comes from deep within us, and it comes from that space of joy. It comes from a place of awe and wonder, and it comes from a place of having faith in the infinite possibilities, of faith in the good that exists within the world, and of faith knowing that that good is alive within you. And so, with this in mind right now, I'm going to invite you to practice and embody the energy of peace in your life. Now, one of the things that I always love, and one of my favorite spiritual practices, is music, allowing music to permeate my soul. And you know what? You may say, oh, Reverend Jerry, that is so wonderful, but I don't have time to listen to music. I want you to know I'm so diverse in my music. I just have so much fun. I can put on some Earth, Wind, and Fire and have a spiritual experience. I could put on some Michael Jackson and have a spiritual experience, or Marvin Gaye, or whomever. I love Sting, and I have that wonderful God experience. We can have that God experience in a wonderful way. But we're going to close today with a special song, and that song comes from Faith Rivera, and the song is Peace Today. I want you to listen to that song, and after that, I'll come back and we will do a prayer. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm inviting you to have a God grand rising this week, all week long. Thank you. Namaste. Take it away, Amber.